All right, everybody, bear with us for just a couple more minutes when we move some of the executive committee members onto the panelist link.
Sandra, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Sandra, did I thank you for your help and support in my latest bid to remain on the Lake Mission Viejo board?
And you made it?
I did.
Oh, no, you haven't thanked me. Check's in the mail.
I apologize. I sent out a blanket email and I thought you were on my list, but so you're good for concerts the next 2 years. So keep an eye on what we have coming up.
All right, you guys, let's get going. With that, I'd like to start the South Orange County Watershed Management Area Executive Committee meeting for November the 4th. And I want you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you for bearing with us during some technical difficulties. Please rise. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hi, my name is Kay Havens, and I'm taking Tiffany's place today. She was called into court. So with that, we're going to go over some regular housekeeping and webinar procedures. If you have we will be going through several presentations. We'll first be covering committee member discussion and comments, and then we'll go to public comment, and then the committee will take action should it be required.
Did we take roll?
No, but we will.
Oh, sorry.
Jenna, do you want to take roll?
Maria will take roll unless she'll take roll, reading everyone's names. So you're confirming your presence as she reads it. If you are an alternate serving in the stead of the primary, please indicate that when Maria reads the name of the primary participant.
Okay, I'm going to start. So are you going to run through more slides, or do you want me to start roll call?
Roll call, please, Marie.
Okay. Debbie Neef.
Here.
Sandra Jacobs.
Here.
Kelly Jennings. Mike Frost.
Here.
Karen McLaughlin. Sue Kemp. Dave Wheeler. Carol Moore.
Present.
Brian Goodall.
Here.
Nikki Mwatadesi. Kay Havens.
Here.
Bill Moorhead.
Here.
Megan Yu Schneider. Lisa Bartlett.
Kevin Onuma here for Lisa Bartlett.
Brad McGear. Steve Knobloch. Derek Reeves. Doug Erdman.
Here.
Betty Burnett.
Present.
Ed Mandich.
I'm here.
And Sergio Farias. Okay, that's it.
And to confirm, we now have quorum.
Good, thank you. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad you were able to make it through to get to the meeting today. I need to make a motion regarding moving item number 6 up in the agenda in order to be in compliance with AB 361.
I so move.
Thank you, Carol.
Second.
Sandra
way-
Jacobs, second.
So thank you, everybody. So Jenna, would you like to cover this item in brief?
Yes, Andy, if you could please go to item number 6 for me, please. So while Andy cues that up, I'm sure most of you have heard this at a city council or water board meeting prior to this, but I will go through the background. So Andy, you can go ahead to the next slide. Executive Order N2920 suspended elements of the Ralph M. Brown Act for that required all locations of members of the subject board that are teleconferencing publicly post their location. There were a couple of, so that was that in particular was the primary mechanism by which groups such as this have been meeting via teleconference. The governor issued Executive Order N821, which sunset the prior executive order effective October 1st. And as for background, there are still state of emergency in effect, both state and local. Next. AB 361 was signed on September 16th. It provides a mechanism for teleconferencing meetings to continue through January 1st of 2024 when a state of emergency remains active and or state or local officials have imposed or recommended measures to promote social distancing. In order to continue doing so, the committee must no later than 30 days after teleconferencing for the first time, which is this meeting, and 30 days thereafter make the following findings by majority vote. So the committee, as you'll see in the recommended actions, will read the findings, and if the findings are made, in item number 7, we have approval of the meeting dates that comply with the 30-day specification. Next. So as I mentioned, we have several dates. There's 2 for the remainder of the 2021 calendar year. And then I've also included dates in item number 7 for the first quarter of 2022 for approval at this meeting. If we continue to, if the findings are made at this meeting and then made at subsequent meetings, we can add more dates as necessary. If we do not make findings, then we would meet in person. As of right now, the prior location where we met would not provide for any distancing, and they also do not have any teleconferencing capabilities within the facility. There may be other facilities. At this time, our recommendation is to continue with teleconferencing. Next slide, and to make findings. So the recommended actions are to review and reconsider the circumstances of the state of emergency, confirm that the South Orange County Watershed Management Area Executive Committee finds that it has reconsidered the state of emergency and that the state of emergency continues to impact the ability of members to meet safely in person. Based on the findings of recommendations 1 and 2, the Executive Committee will continue teleconferencing meetings unless and until the findings in recommended actions 1 and 2 no longer apply.
So with that, I'd like to open it up for discussion from committee members. Does anybody have anything they'd like to discuss on this item?
Yeah, this is Ed Mandich. I have a question. Jenna, if, our budget was based on county staff time based on quarterly meetings, if we were to meet every 30 days, what would that do to our budget?
So given that these meetings will be very brief, it doesn't logistically, it's not a significant lift to add those meetings to the calendar. So at this time, I'm not concerned with the budget.
Okay, good.
Jenna, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the only item on a lot of these calendars would be this AB 361, approving it monthly.
Yes, there's only one potential exception on the December 2nd, if we do proceed on the December 2nd agenda, but that similarly would be very short. So each of these meetings, that would be the singular item for us if it was not a regular quarterly meeting.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this item? Any other?
I had a question. December 2nd, when does the Aqua Conference start or end? Isn't that around that time?
It is the last day of the Aqua Conference. So I have a note there that there are 2 alternative dates for the AB 361 meetings if that is an issue. It's the afternoon of the final day. So if we think we still have quorum, I would suggest we continue with the 2nd. But we have the ability to move it to November 29th, which would be the Monday preceding the conference.
I think that would make more sense myself. Coming back from Pasadena, I don't know where people are traveling from, but I'm guessing that you're not going to get a whole lot of attendance at 2:30.
Okay.
It's
That's my
also
thought.
the SCAG conference, economic conference too. The second is, pardon me.
It's also SCAG. Is that what you said?
It's their economic conference summit is on that day too. I don't know, people
Okay.
will be involved. Could I make a comment too on this? I think this is a great idea. It meets a lot of needs. Not only do we not have people having to be on the highways and adding to air pollution and so forth, it seems to me this is something that we should pursue with possibly Cotty Petrie Norris or one of our legislators to address that we want to make certain we're open and people have an opportunity to know what we're doing. That's critical. And I support that. But it also, if we are really serious about climate change, then we have to think about other factors here. And I can't believe that driving up to Los Angeles, for example, for SCAG meetings or, some of these other meetings, it seems to me that we're defeating the purpose if we're really serious. Thank you.
We appreciate that comment, Carol, and we appreciate your comments too, Bill. Any further comments?
I have my hand up.
Oh, for some reason, I'm not seeing hands raised, so.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. It's Betty Burnett for Aqua. Jenna, we just made these 361 findings, and the way that the council that we've got is looking at this is that you don't necessarily have to have a meeting every 30 days to continue. The way they looked at it was we could refresh the findings at the top of any meeting if we were to hold our meetings off of the 30-day schedule. So I know this is pretty new, and I think the League of Cities was trying to put out some information on an interpretation. So I don't know if that's possible to check, but or maybe county council has already weighed in that they think this is the right way to do this, but it perhaps we'll get more clarification as this is used by agencies.
At this time, I appreciate that. I think at this time, our county council was going with, I think, the more conservative interpretation of having a meeting every 30 days. If we receive guidance that indicates we can make the findings on a quarterly basis, then we can certainly adjust and then make at a future meeting, take dates off the calendar.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, Sandra Jacobs. Yeah, just to tag on to Betty, Ms. Burnett, the Independent Special Districts of Orange County had a speaker just several weeks ago, and one of those was addressing this and telecommunication conferences. So, and meetings such as this, and that question did come up. And while the bill didn't take into account quarterly meetings, that interpretation through legal channels was, as Betty was saying, taking into account quarterly meetings. But Jenna, if you have gotten some guidance from county council that we should do this monthly with a single agenda item, then I think we need to take county council's suggestion until we hear otherwise. And I will do everything in my power to make myself available on December 2nd to be there for that quorum. Because if we don't have a quorum, then can't do it anyway. So we'll beg, borrow, and steal to get people on the call. Thank you. That's all I had.
Yeah, I
Okay.
would agree. I'll agree with Sandra on that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Is there a reason why November, the 29th is not suitable?
It was more for consistency. I was really trying to get Thursdays at 2:30 because that appeared to work well. We don't have to do it that way. It would also avoid having two in the month of November.
Sure.
But again, it doesn't, if we need two, we can, and I've already worked that out such that it would change two. It would be November 29th and then December 29th. So when we get to item number 7, we can make that decision. If we think December 2nd is touch and go.
Very good. So do I have a motion? I didn't hear any, I don't see any. Do we have anything from the public on this? Any comment?
We don't have any comments, but I also wanted to make a note that if the public wants to raise their hand, they just need to dial *3 on their phones, and they'll be able to raise their hand like that.
I'm not seeing any, and I don't have anything in the Q&A.
So with that, may I have a motion on this, please?
I so
I
move.
will. I'll second to Carol's motion. This is Sandra.
That was a first by Carol Moore, a second by Sandra Jacobs. So do we take a roll call vote?
Could you repeat the motion just for clarity?
The motion is to, the recommended action
Is to make findings. There we go. I was gonna say that we'll put it back on the screen for reference.
right? Based upon the findings and recommendations 1 and 2, the South Orange County Watershed Management Area Executive Committee will continue teleconference meetings unless and until the findings and recommended actions 1 and 2 no longer apply. So with that, may I have a roll call vote, please?
How about we do in if it's okay, if we say anyone not in favor?
Okay,
I'm sorry.
anyone not in favor?
Call my name.
That's great.
I have workers on my roof. I'm sorry.
Hearing none, that item passes. And that brings us back to item number 2. Thank you, everybody, for your patience in that. We want to remain in compliance, and so we had to start out with the one that allows us to remain in compliance. Do we have any public comments on non-agenda items?
We don't have any.
Thank you. On to item number 3, approval of the minutes. Recommended action is to approve the minutes of the August 5th, 2021 meeting.
So moved by Goodell.
Brian Goodell moves,
Seconded by Debbie Neve.
seconded by Debbie Neve. Thank you. Does anybody oppose? Not hearing anyone in opposition, the minutes are approved. Moving on to item number 4, our first presentation of the day from Pacific Marine Mammal Center on the PMMC on the oil spill response with Peter Chang.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Peter, I hear you.
Yes,
Oh.
we can.
Great. I want to start off by sharing and extending my appreciation to the committee for the support for this last round of Prop 1 state grant application and for believing in us and in this project. It's meant everything. So thank you for all of that. Also, thank you for having me here. Is mine? Yeah. Thank you for having me here. And so, as we all know, we had a really bad oil spill in the month of October, and I was asked to share, how it was from our perspective, and definitely happy to share. But before that, I just wanted to give a brief overview of Pacific Marine Mammal Center in case some folks are not aware. So, do I have the ability to control slides? No, I don't, right? All right, so we have 3 core programs. So the first core program, next slide, please, is our animal care operations. So I didn't know this when we first joined, but marine mammals, whether they're endangered or not, they're all protected species by the federal government. And so we're the only operations that have approval by NOAA in Orange County to work with these wild marine mammals when they get stranded, injured. We will get those calls from the public, from lifeguard, harbor patrol, anyone to go out and rescue them. Our team goes out and they pick the animal up. These animals go back to our center, which is in Laguna Beach. They stay anywhere from 2 to 5 months, and we rehab them. We provide them with medical treatments, and we get them all fattened up. And our whole goal is a little bit different than a zoo or an aquarium. Our whole goal is to release them back into the wild so they can contribute to their ecosystem. So these animals stay at the center anywhere, I mentioned that, between 2 to 5 months. We rescue anywhere between about 150 to 600 animals a year. And what gives us that extra motivation to do what we do is because these animals are coming in because of us as humans. Either what we're doing at the broader level with carbon emissions and pesticides and fertilizer that we're using inland, or what we're doing at the micro level with, fishing line entanglements. We're seeing boat strikes. We see a number of gunshot wounds every year as well. So all these things are happening because of us. The natural things that happen, like shark bites, we will treat those, but unfortunately, those are just a few times a year. Everything really is because of us as humans. So this is our 50th year in the community, and I'm proud to say, as of this year, we've served close to about 10,000 marine mammals with our programs. Next slide. And then a couple of other ways that we make a broader impact. One is education, and the reason that we have these additional ways is because the rescue program is in many ways a reactive, responsive program. We can't do anything until the public or the agencies call us to do something, and then the team does a great job, but it's a very proactive program. These last 2 pillars, starting with education, allows us to be a little bit more proactive, broader impacting. And with our education programs, we use these animals as a backdrop to really develop that next generation of biologists and marine scientists and veterinarians, and inspire them and make them aware of these career pathways and teach them about science through the lens of these animals. At our center here, we, as well as with our virtual programs, we reach about 15,000 kids. Most of them are at risk through Title I schools, Boys and Girls Clubs, foster kids, other organizations. We also are in 13 children's hospitals across the country, and we have a great program with military veterans that have PTSD. So education is very much embedded into the fabric of this organization, and it's something that we continue to prioritize every single day. Next slide, please. And then the third pillar is our scientific research, and again, this is another way for us to be proactive. This is where we collaborate with different universities, different agencies to kind of get ahead of some of these issues that we're seeing. Currently, right now, we have some active projects with domoic acid, which is a result of harmful algae blooms in the water. We also are very much studying sea lion cancer, and a big part of that is the DDT barrels that the thousands and even hundreds of thousands that they're finding in the ocean waters between here and Catalina Island. So we have a great research team, and they're collaborating not only with local universities like UCI, but others across the country. So it's really great to be able to work with them. And so that's those are our core pillars of our organization. And I'll just kind of pause right there to see if anyone has any questions at this point. No? All right, next slide. Thank you. So October 2nd is where kind of our world kind of turned upside down for several weeks, actually. It's when we got the news that there was this massive oil spill off of Huntington Beach, and it was truly, the reports were that it was truly massive, anywhere between 126,000 gallons to 144,000 gallons spilled in our ocean waters. That would have made it one of the top 5 worst in modern California history, which goes back to the 60s. And really the last major oil spill, just to put it into context, the last major oil spill happened about 30 years ago, and that was when over 400,000 gallons were spilled from an oil tanker. And none of us were at the organization at that time, so this was something that was very much unknown territory for us. And so we were learning as the hours and days went by. Next slide. It was truly a lot of unknown, other than that it was just massive and that it was going to create havoc. You know, as everyone or most of us know, the Pacific Air Show, which draws millions of people to Huntington Beach, that closed down on Sunday. And that's a big deal to close down that air show. And then in the days that followed, the city, county, and state agencies, they closed the beaches, and they were telling us that those beaches were going to be closed for up to months. So this was a huge deal, and we were essentially preparing for the worst. Next slide. But then, you know, as the days unfolded, what happened is we just saw sporadic animals come in, and we're wondering what is going on. Is this going to happen? Is it going to be a big tidal wave going to come on top of us at some point? And then what we found out, and this is all great news for everyone, was that the oil spill was not as big as originally planned or originally talked about. So until they were able to do, and this is the unified command, until they were able to identify exactly how much oil was spilled, they had to constantly talk about the worst case scenario, and that's when it kind of narrowed down to about 132,000 gallons of oil spilled. I think in the back of their minds, though, as they started to learn more about it, they knew it was going to be a lot less, but until they could pin that down, they kept on talking about that 132,000 gallons of oil spilled. But another piece of good news, you know, if an oil spill had to happen in terms of, from our perspective, this is the time of year where it's kind of ideal, because sea lions, they have their pups all around June of this time, and they have their pups out there in the Channel Islands, and moms usually stay with their pups for about 5 to 11 months. So they're still out there at the Channel Islands right now, and they'll be out there for, you know, maybe at least another month or so before they come back here. So they are far away from the danger of a big or small oil spill. So this is good timing for marine mammals. Next slide. So I did want to mention that, you know, although it was just sporadic releases that were coming in, it was a lot of work. You know, we found ourselves in a regulatory environment. It was managed by a multi-state and federal agency operation. Literally, if we wanted to do something, we had to get approval from 3 different agencies. So during the first 3 weeks, and it still holds true to today, which is going on to be almost the 5th week of this oil spill, we've only responded to 5 animals. And again, that's fantastic news. But there were 2 deceased animals that we responded to and 3 live animals. With those 3 live animals, one was a dolphin up at Cabrillo Beach, and that dolphin was in such bad shape we had to humanely euthanize it at the beach. We also had a big adult sea lion, and it was having seizures, and right when we got there, it was overcome and it passed away on its own. And then the 3rd one was the most recent one. It's that sea lion on the green buoy that you see on the screen there. And that was in such bad shape. By the time we got it to the center, the most we could do was humanely euthanize it. So it was really tough going for these 5 animals. To have a streak of that was really bad, but it's not necessarily unusual at this time of year. This is where we see kind of the one-offs, the really tough cases. And as of right now, we're still doing those analysis. That we did necropsies on all those animals. And because of the regulatory environment that we found ourselves in, everything's taken a long time. One single necropsy, which is basically an animal autopsy, which normally a normal one would take about 3 hours. Each of these took 6 to 7 hours to complete, just because of all the guidelines that we need to follow, all the photographs, all the documentation. And at this point, we're still waiting for this histology and pathology reports and other findings. But there was no clear evidence that these animals were impacted by the oil at this point, but that's not official. That's not official right now. So next slide, please. So other things that we continue to do, and it's kind of died down in the last few days, but we do train for these types of disasters throughout the year, and it's formal training that you need. There's an organization called the Oiled Wildlife Care Network. It's a pseudo state agency here in California, and they're the ones that have to certify trained members of the community to be approved to be able to be activated to respond to these oil things. So we have about 9 people on our team, mostly staff. We have some volunteers that are officially certified. They've been doing it years leading up to this oil spill. And so when this first happened, they were immediately activated. And because of that, they were on the beaches from day one, scouring the beaches, looking for wildlife. It was mostly birds in the early days, and then it ended up to be birds throughout. And our teams are very much part of that, bringing those birds, rescuing them, and bringing them back, and helping to get them recovered. And now they're slowly getting released back to the wild. We also were very much supporting our sister agencies throughout this process. You guys probably saw in the news, the Wetlands and Wildlife Center in Huntington Beach was directly in the front lines, because they're the ones that were the identified agency to respond to bird rescues. They're a great agency. We've partnered with them for years. And when this first happened, they were frankly a little bit overwhelmed, just because they didn't have the staffing or resources. We immediately went to help with them. We staffed people over there. We reached out to our network, and we fundraised, and we got supplies for them. We actually still have a storage bin full of supplies that are kind of waiting for them at this point. So they've been a great partner, and we were very fortunate to be able to work with them. And then finally, there's a agency or a center in La Jolla called the Southwest Fisheries Science Center, and it's part of affiliated with the federal government, NOAA, and they're the agency or center that is the deemed the ones that are supposed to do necropsies for all dolphins and turtles as part of this oil spill response. But because of all the federal guidelines um, that are in place because of COVID, they haven't had people in their facilities essentially since March of last year. And because of that, they haven't been able to kind of do any of their research projects that they've been contracted to do. And long story short, they haven't had the staffing because the grants were not renewed because they haven't been able to fulfill their grants. So they reached out early on and asked if we could support them. So we brought on a new vet. That vet continues to be based at the Southwest Fisheries Science Center, and she's amazing, and she's helped to put together the oil spill response protocols that are needed for those necropsies over there, and she's the lead scientist doing the necropsies over there at this time. So she continues to be a big part of their operations over there. So those were kind of the main areas that we had going throughout this process of the oil spill response. And then next slide talks a little bit about kind of where our focus has shifted in the last few days. Because we know now that there's probably not going to be a lot of animals coming in because the amount of oil was spilled was not as great, and also that the sea lions are all at the Channel Islands. So we've shifted our thinking to being, using this really as an exercise to make sure that we're prepared. This was very much a wake-up call for us. We had to do a lot of shifting, a lot of preparing on the fly, and that's not something that we want to have happen next time, especially if there was a major oil spill. So we're using this time to make sure that those protocols are in place, the supplies that we need are in place, and the infrastructure for appropriate oil spill response is in place as well. So that's something that we're continuing to do at this time. And then the other thing is we're being part of a group trying to understand the long-term impacts. Decades ago, the conventional belief was that when an oil spill happened, the impact was just in the first few weeks. Once you get the oil out and somehow all the oil magically disappears. But I think because of experience and new technology, we now know that there are long-term repercussions of these oil spills. We're seeing degradation of coastlines. We're still seeing that what we're learning in Deepwater Horizon that happened over 10 years ago in the Gulf of Mexico. We're still seeing animals show up with residual oil in their system. And what we're doing is we're trying to understand the long-term impacts, knowing that this probably is not just going away in Orange County. So that's where our focus has shifted to over the last few days. And then lastly, I just want to share with the group, if there was one silver lighting to this whole thing, and that's the next slide, it was that the community responded like gangbusters. I mean, the first several days, actually, for 3 straight weeks, the phone calls kept coming in. It was parents that wanted to ask about how their kids could create fundraisers for us in Huntington Beach wetlands. It was, what supplies do you need? It's how do we donate directly to you guys? It was endless. We had Amazon delivery trucks coming 3 days a week, or no, sorry, 3 times a day, just delivering stuff. It was incredible. This picture at the bottom right, if you just kind of look into it, there's just nonstop Amazon boxes that we still are looking for places to put those things. So that was amazing to see the public respond back, and now that we're kind of caught our breath a little bit, we're reaching back out to the public, and we're trying to redirect these resources because we, in all transparency, we didn't use we didn't need all the resources and frankly donations that came in. So we're reaching back out and we're figuring out where they want these resources redirected, and just thanking the community for stepping up. So that's kind of how it's been. And to believe it's only been 5 weeks, it seems like the oil spill started about a year ago, but it's we're just closing in on the 5th week. It's still not going to go away. You know, we still have a lot of protocols that we need to follow. We're on calls every day with multiple agencies and with the coordination, but it looks like we've kind of gotten through the brunt of any short-term impact with these marine mammals, and now we're just hoping that there's no long-term impact. So with that, I'll leave it to the group to see if there's any questions that I can help answer.
Thank you, Peter. You did an excellent job, and your group has just done amazing service in these last 6 weeks since this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I see Carol Moore has a question. Carol, you want to unmute?
It's not there, finally. It didn't click right away. I want to go back to what's going on, and if you could bring us up to date on the DDT barrels that are over near Catalina. I know you can't move them, and what's happening there, and also what about the number of cancerous mammals? I think it was mainly sea lions.
Well,
could you address that? Thank you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. This is a huge priority for us. I don't know some of the answers to those questions. I can tell you what I've heard. So those barrels of DDT, they're estimated to be, for sure, they've found tens of thousands of barrels out there, but the estimates that it's going to be closer to hundreds of thousands of barrels. It's a tough situation. They don't know how to remove it. They don't know how to resolve it, because if they try to remove it, it's going to unsettle it and possibly create a bigger disaster. I heard that there's also some clarification that needs to be cleared up about what agency is responsible in terms of addressing those barrels and cleanup, which is outside of the purview of our organization. But what we know is that it's impacted these animals, and the sea lions in particular. What we're seeing in these sea lion populations along California's coast is not something that we're seeing in any sea lion population in any part of the other part of the world. And of the adult sea lions that we are responding to, that we are rescuing, we see sea lion cancer in upwards of 20 to 25% of these animals. And what we have found out is that the DDT it actually was created to as a pesticide, and it just does too well of a job. It's just killing everything. And so what it's doing is it's weakening the immune systems of these animals, and it's allowing a herpes virus to take hold. And what we're seeing is a specific cervical cancer in these animals, both males and females.
Is there any correlation? Have we seen any with the effects on sea lions and human acquisition of cancer?
Yeah, you know, that's a great question. So we're part of this belief of One Health, and it's this understanding that kind of there's a lot of crossover between different species, and so there are right now we are starting to have these, or not starting. We're in the midst of some discussions with folks down in Florida that are looking at pediatric cancer, and they are wanting to kind of take some of the learnings that we're finding over here to see how that resembles how pediatric cancer is manifesting. So there is definitely a strong belief of that. We are part of this Sea Lion Cancer Consortium. So it's not just us. It's a group of international biologists and veterinarians not only across the country, but I believe it's Canada and Mexico and parts of Europe that have really taken this on as a priority. Our Vice President of Conservation Medicine and Science, Alyssa Deming, is the chair of that. She studied cancer in sea lions actually when she was during her PhD, and at some point would love to introduce you guys to her. She's a wealth of information, and it's all very fascinating. And so we're definitely, it's definitely a priority for us, and that's kind of what I know at this point.
Very good. Sandra, did I see your hand up as well?
You did. I think, though, Peter probably answered that, because my question was, in those sea animals that you said you saw long-term oil contamination in their system, were they still thriving? They just adapted to the long-term impact? But based on what you just said about DDT, I kind of, anyway, that's all I was going to ask. Thank you.
No, that's a great question, and I don't know the full answer to that. What I do know is that they are functioning, but the scientific community is worried about kind of the long-term impact. I mean, that was I think they're finding these animals from Deepwater Horizon, which was just 10 years ago. So they're worried about the next 10 years of what's going to happen with these animals. So at this point, they're still functioning, but they're worried about longer term impacts.
Very interesting.
I have a question. I
Yes,
didn't know
sir.
how to raise my hand on this in the WebEx, but I'm a fairly regular visitor to your facility and an annual contributor. You guys do amazing work down there. Do you see yourself able to expand at all? I know you don't have much space down there, but do you see yourself expanding?
No, that's a great question, and you know, it's a pretty imminent need for us. You know, we assume this, and it was a barn. If you come over to our facility, you can tell it was an old barn, and we assumed it back in 1976, and we've made it work. But the things that we're seeing in the ocean waters and with these animals have evolved very much over time. You know, in the early days, it was just a lot of starving animals that would just come up on the beaches. These days, we're seeing emerging diseases. We're seeing a lot of entanglements. We're seeing both, we're seeing like the cancer. We're seeing all these different issues that make our facility very much outdated. And so the grant submission with you guys is a big part of how we're going to expand. So right now we are getting close to getting some permits from the city, which will allow us to not only have this very state-of-the-art water reclamation system that I believe that you guys know about, that's going to allow us to reclaim you know, up to 80–85% of our water, but it's going to also allow us to add 3 additional new marine mammal rehab pools to our center. We currently have 7, so 3 more would make it 10. We would double the size of our education center. We would build a new 400 square foot treatment lab. Currently, right now, the unfortunate thing is we do procedures in any open space. It's hallways or outdoor space, and that's not really safe for the animals or the staff that are working on these animals. So we do need that space to do these procedures now that we're seeing more and more need for them. And then we're going to round it out with some additional office and storage space, and that's going to pretty much take up every nook and cranny of this area of the canyon for us. And you know, truthfully, we're probably going to need some space afterwards. So you know, part of our strategic plan is kind of, you know, having some satellite locations in other parts of the county. North County, particular, Huntington Beach, Newport Beach area, you know, that's actually where we see most of our patients. And to have, you know, something over there where we could triage these animals rather than have the animals kind of in the back of our pickup trucks, you know, going through traffic, taking an hour to get to our center. You know, those are things that we're currently thinking about.
Yeah, you guys do great work. I'm helping as best I can, but you guys are doing great work down there.
Thank you so much.
Brian?
Yeah, I have a question. I think it just dawned on me. These barrels of DDT are in the water, is that right, or not on Catalina?
Yeah, they're at the bottom of the ocean.
Jesus. Okay, and
It's a logistical nightmare.
sounds like it. Yeah. And where's your current location?
We are a couple miles inland in Laguna Beach.
Oh, right. I know you are. Okay. Thank you.
On Laguna Canyon Road. Well worth a visit. Any further comment from committee members? I see no more hands raised. Any further comment from the public? I think if you're on a phone, you need to press *3.
I
We
don't
have
see any hands raised.
we have one from a call-in user.
Call-in user 14.
Maria, can
So-
you unmute their line?
I don't see their hands raised on my screen. What is their number? Do you? Okay, let me see. I think I got it
This is
there. Okay.
Good.
hi, Mike B. Okay.
Is that you, Mike Beenan? I'm showing that
Mike.
caller number 14 is unmuted. Caller number 14, you may go ahead.
Hi, Mike Bean. Is this coming through?
Yes, it is.
Oh, thank you. So, apologize. Every system is different, it seems. First of all, Peter, thank you so much for all of your work. And we actually have benefited the Laguna Bluebell Coalition from one of your marine biologists, Allison Santos. She's come on board for our Irbm Buddy program at Aliso Beach and was active throughout the sewage spill to monitor for animals that were injured. And, you know, the spill reminds us all that there's a lot of things we don't see that enter the ocean. And one of the things the Bluebell has been working on is water quality, particularly discharges at Aliso Beach. And I want to remind everyone that these contaminants enter the food web and wind up in our seafood as well. So I think the oil spill is a great wake-up call for us to really study what's going on in the ocean and work together to develop the science which supports the programs. And finally, I want to notice that the SEALs are leading the way in Laguna's recycled water program. So thanks, Peter, for that. Thanks all for letting me speak.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Well said.
I see no other public comment.
Very good. Thank you very much for your presentation and for enlightening us on so many different items today. That brings us to item number 5, which is a presentation on the San Juan Creek Watershed Project and Collaboration Forum update. Sandra, did you say that you were going to cover this today?
I did. Thank you, Sandra Jacobs, Santa Margarita Water District. Norris Brandt, the administrator for the San Juan Basin Authority, has a coinciding meeting today. And so he sent me a brief summary that if you would allow me, Madam Vice Chair, to read.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. So this is an update on the San Juan Creek Working Group, which provides a venue for conceptualizing and vetting water projects in the San Juan Creek watershed by public agencies, regulators, and members of the public. With the recent finalization of the annexation of the water and wastewater system of the city of San Juan Capistrano by Santa Margarita Water District, which formally goes into play at November 15th, we're now ready to move forward with this forum. One of the San Juan Creek Forum topics of interest to the county will be capturing urban low flows and possibly stormwater and treating and reusing that water source in South Orange County. We'll be using the 4 South Orange County IRWM regional goals to guide the brainstorming. And these goals are equally important and not in any specific order, but I think some of you will remember them. 1, increase water supply, reliability, and efficiency. 2, improve water quality. 3, integrate flood management. And 4, protection and enhancement of natural resources. Norris is looking forward to water projects in the San Juan Creek watershed that make sense to South Orange County. In late November, he'll be sending out more information via email about the first forum, inviting those who are interested to participate. If anyone is interested in participating, please email Norris at norris.brandt, spelled BRANDT, at sjbauthority.com. And I'll be happy to help you out with that email if you need it. And he'll be glad to include you on the forum master list. So that was the update that he prepared for us today. There were no slides. There were a couple of questions that came up at his last presentation. Just real briefly, there were 4 quick questions. One of them were, are these meetings going to be open to the public? And the answer is yes. Will public notice be given? Yes. How will you notify people about the meeting? We plan to maintain an email list starting with representatives from each of the organizations listed in the charter, which is included in your agenda packet today. I believe it is. We will send email notifications out as well. And then finally, number 4, will you keep minutes? No, there are no actions being taken or decisions being made by a legislative body in these forums. They are simply an excellent opportunity to share information among participants on water projects and related issues. And that concludes what he had written down there. And just as a reminder, part of the county's budget included a working group for the San Juan Creek watershed. And rather than reinvent the wheel, we're trying to combine some resources and knowledge of the San Juan Creek in basically this working group, working with the county. And I understand that Jenna and county staff have been very, very helpful in moving this forward for Norris, who will be heading that up. So that's all I have today. And thank you for allowing me to stand in for Mr. Norris Brandt. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Good report. And would you mind repeating his email one more time in case somebody's on the phone and didn't quite get it?
Oh, yes. So it's Norris, Norris, dot BRANDT at sjbauthority.com.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Sandra from our committee, please? Seeing no hands raised.
There is a hand up, but I think it's Mike from the prior item.
Let's check with him just to be sure. Mike,
Yeah.
He'll need to be unmuted again.
He has been unmuted.
Mike, did you have a comment on this item as well?
I'm sorry, I think I hit it twice last time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So with that, this is a receive and file, and we will do just that. Having covered item number 6, we are now moving on to item number 7, a discussion around the future meeting dates and grant schedules. And I will hand this over to Jenna.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Andy, next slide. So at the final meeting in any calendar year, we approve meeting dates for the coming calendar year. And that is, we have quarterly meeting dates. And on grant, in years where we anticipate a grant, meaning an IRWM grant, and I have some background information in this presentation for folks who haven't been through this process. However, in the year where we have an IRWM grant that we anticipate coming out from DWR, I also typically propose alternate meeting dates. The reason for that is until we have final guidelines, which aren't anticipated until the end of November, we don't yet officially know when applications are due, and that we do have a required action by the executive committee to approve a final slate and make a final recommendation. And that is the impetus for the application. So it's really important that we have some flexibility built in throughout the year to allow for us to be a little bit more agile depending on what that schedule looks like. So you'll see the regular quarter meeting dates, alternative meeting dates specifically for the IRWM grant application process. And if they are not needed, we will stick with the regular quarter meeting dates. And then based on the recommended actions and the findings that the committee made under item number 6, there are a series of meetings that meet the 30-day requirement. As was noted before, I can follow up with County Council. If we receive different guidance, we don't have to utilize these meetings, but for now we want to have them on the books. What I've done is gone out for at least the first quarter of 2022, and we can add more as necessary. It really depends on whether or not we need one of those initial alternative meeting dates to schedule the 30 days out. So that's why I've gone through the first quarter for ease. Next slide. As I noted, I'll give a little bit of background. I won't go into great detail, and I'm certainly available to anyone who has any specific questions, but I wanted to give a little bit of background on one of the primary roles and responsibilities of the executive committee. As an IRWM region, an accepted region for the state of California, we receive funds through a grant program that allocates funding to what we call funding areas. IRWM serves that key purpose. It also is effectively a concept that this group embodies by bringing together folks across jurisdictional, would otherwise be jurisdictional silos. Next slide. This is a high level look at the governance structure for this group, which gives a little bit, that gives kind of the big picture reason why the executive committee is integral to the process for establishing a slate of projects for any individual IRWM grant. The structure of IRWM is that we have a regional water management group, or RWMG. There's an acronym for everything. The regional water management group was required to establish the IRWM in the initial stages in 2005. And that qualified us to develop a plan and to be in receipt of the initial Proposition 50 funds. Our regional water management group comprises the County of Orange, the SOCWA, the South Orange County Wastewater Authority, and the Municipal Water District of Orange County, representing 3 key areas of water resource management: surface water quality, wastewater, and water purveyor. Subsequent to that, and in 2010, this group decided to expand the group and the decision-making process, and established a cooperative agreement that today now has 22 member agencies signatory to it. And that also established the governance structure that we operate under today, which has the executive committee, the decision-making body with approval authority for annual work plans and cost share budgets, and for IRWM grant project approval. And that is your responsibility, is to ensure all the projects moving forward really meet the intent of our IRWM plan. And then we have the management committee, which comprises staff level representatives of the 22 member agencies. They are effectively the working group. We have executive committee ad hocs. We will discuss the strategic visioning process in a minute. And then we have other ad hocs in groups such as the Aliso Creek Watershed Project Collaboration Group, which is a stakeholder driven process. Next. And this is kind of the big picture of what we say when we mean the South Orange County Watershed Management Area and the IRWM group. We're talking broadly about those 22 member agencies and other key stakeholders. Collectively, we as a group have garnered $38 million in grant funding supporting 28 projects that meet the IRWM goals, and we've done that over the last 15 years. Next slide. And I won't go into a lot of detail here, but we have our key document driving not just compliance with UWR's IRWM program, but also the selection and prioritization of projects is our IRWM plan. We were found compliant with Proposition 1. We were able to allocate funds, about $2.5 million for the first round. The goals, objectives, and strategies. You can go to the next slide, actually, Andy. Are kind of that quintessential bedrock of the IRWM plan. They need to be quantifiable. So we have the 4 overarching goals that were referenced earlier, and I have on the next slide. We have quantifiable objectives and measurable strategies. And each of those have a weighting process, weighting associated with them that this group developed over a couple of years, and that we use to assess projects as they come in. Next slide. And here are the goals and the associated objectives. And I know it's small print, there are a lot of them, and we add that detail so that it assists in our process of assessing projects as they come in. But as was mentioned earlier, our 4 key areas of focus are natural resource protection and enhancement, surface water quality protection, water supply reliability and efficiency, and flood risk management. Next slide. In the plan, Chapter 6, it lays out the entire process for the stakeholder process associated with project prioritization and development of a slate of projects for any grant. As I've noted here, that last stage, which is a really key piece in the process, is the executive committee considering all of the recommendations made by the stakeholder groups up to that point, and through a very careful and intensive vetting process. Your role and responsibility is to approve that slate. That kicks off a series of actions that results in an application submitted to the Department of Water Resources. Next slide. And as of now, this is effectively the flowchart of the process. Right now, we are in that first step. We are waiting for the draft proposal solicitation packet, which is the PSP and the guidelines. And then the management committee takes the next several steps. We have an ad hoc of that group that does a lot of the assessment. We do a call for projects once that ad hoc has convened, and then that starts the process of reviewing the projects that we receive in through an open call for projects. As of right now, the word on the street is that the grant, that will have 2 grant application dates, one in March and one in September. Our governance process really focuses on stakeholder engagement, and this group, the management committee, public workshops, to make sure that the projects really represent our region. We cannot meet the March deadline because they haven't even issued the guidelines. So we are definitely going to submit for the September date. So as we know more, I will flesh this out with all the dates. So when I come back to you, I will have dates on each of these key points in the process. Next slide. This is the total amount of funding that was allocated to the San Diego funding area, $52.5 million. For Proposition 1, there was a specific allocation or carve out made for disadvantaged communities across the state that represented effectively 10% set aside for all of the funding areas. We have a great relationship. This was on a slide earlier, but I didn't go into detail. We have a great relationship with the other 2 IRWM regions within our funding area. That's the San Diego IRWM, which represents the entirety of the county of San Diego, and Upper Santa Margarita, which is a small part of Riverside County. Between San Diego and Riverside, they have some shared watershed. We don't really, we're somewhat isolated from the 2 hydrologically. But we share we all share the same surface water quality permit and a lot of other very similar characteristics. We also have a cooperative agreement that establishes a funding breakdown, so we're not as openly competitive. We are able to know from the beginning approximately how much we have to work with, and that allows us to kind of know ahead how to prioritize the projects and how much funding to allocate to each project. We have in the next round, we allocated in the first round 2.45 million. In this round, we then have just shy of 3.4 million. That includes just shy of $1 million for that 10% disadvantaged community set aside. Next slide. So that's all the background for the reason why we have the regular quarterly meeting schedule. And I wanted to give all of that because that's something that you'll be hearing a lot about as we move forward in 2022. As soon as we get that information from DWR, it kind of kicks off that entire process. And then meetings for AB 361 findings, as I noted earlier, I had selected dates that meet the requirement for every 30 days. However, as you'll see there in the additional consideration, and was mentioned earlier, one of the proposed dates, which is December 2nd, does coincide with the last day of the fall Aqua Conference, and it sounds like it also coincides with the SCAG Economic Summit. So if this group so chooses, you can, I do have listed here alternative dates, which still provide the 30-day in between, which would be, I believe it's a Monday and a Wednesday, November 29th and December 29th. Next slide. So the recommended actions provide for each of those, the regular approving, the regular quarter meetings, the alternative dates for Proposition 1, and now that you've made the findings for number 6, approval of dates for AB 361 compliance.
Does that conclude your report?
It does.
Thank you, Jenna.
Sorry.
So for those of you that are new, you can see how many gears Jenna and the county need to keep engaged in order to keep this ball rolling. So I believe I need a motion in order. Well, let's have our discussion. So any questions or comments from the committee?
This is Sandra, Santa Margarita Water District. I had no questions on the dates. I think they've been well thought out through the year, and as we need to make the dates. And so I would move approval of what's recommended by staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can second it. It's Betty.
Thank you, Betty. We have any comments from the public? I don't see any further comments from the committee. So
we have Megan U. Schneider is listed as an attendee. However, she is an executive committee member and her hand is raised.
Very good. Can we unmute Megan?
Maria?
Maria, can you unmute?
She is unmuted, I believe.
Showing her unmuted on my screen.
It's showing her as muted.
What is her number?
She's on the webinar, so it's M. Schneider.
Okay, got it.
I'm still showing Michael.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, very good.
I was raising my hand actually to second it, and then realized I'm listed as an attendee and couldn't see or unmute myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you, Megan.
And I'm still showing Michael Beenan's hand up. Caller user 14. So if he can be unmuted, he might just not know how to put his hand down.
Sorry.
Did you have any comments?
Sorry about that, folks.
Okay.
Sorry. Thanks, Mike.
Just want to be thorough. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So with that, we have a motion and a second. Now, was the motion for the November 29th meeting, Sandra? Over the December 2nd meeting? Were we going to make that change?
No.
I think it's Betty. I thought I heard Jenna say November 29th and December 29th. Jenna, can you clarify?
Yeah, so if you, Andy, if you could go back to the prior slide, please. The recommended action as listed is for us to meet on December 2nd and December 30th. If the group had a significant concern with the conflict with the Aqua Conference, the other dates, the alternative dates for that would have been November 29th and December 29th to meet with the 30 days. As I understood it, and to clarify, I thought Sandra was approving the dates as recommended.
That would be the 29th.
Second and the 30th.
Yes, for December 2nd and 30th, as you see on the slide.
Oh, so you're moving for December 2nd.
Well,
And
it's
December 30th.
only to approve that 30-day
Right.
resolution or for
AB
for the
361.
assembly bill. So what if I modify my motion to include potential alternative dates of November 30 and November 29 and December 30? You allowed to do that?
Include all of them?
No.
We can do that. We don't have, we would need a decision prior to that point, which one everyone wants to use.
Gotcha.
And actually, if I can just add one more thing, it's coming up in the next, in the executive officers report, we had a very sudden change to the drought relief funding through DWR. We actually have a qualifying project for the disadvantaged community set aside through the drought relief funds, which are not IRWM and do not require us to go through our whole process. But there is a nexus there because they're using the existing agreement that we have with DWR through the IRWM program. So whichever date we go with, whether it's the 29th or the 2nd, there would be one additional item, but that would be just to kind of bless that application as the region. You're not actually doing a review, and we are not submitting the application as San Diego is, because they hold the agreement.
I make a comment?
Yes.
I have my hand up there. I apologize. I missed the beginning of me. I was having computer problems. Any meeting between Christmas and New Year's is probably gonna be pretty shaky. A lot of people travel and go to see family. I would recommend you avoid that week altogether, whether it's the 29th or 30th or 28th or whatever.
We really can't because of the assembly bill requirements to be noticed, to renotice this telecom meeting every 30 days.
What have you under 30 days? Have it 21 days. Let it happen the week before that, the 31st or something. And you'd be within the limits.
But then you have to readjust all the other days from there, all the other dates from there, because you can't go out any further than 30 days from your prior meeting.
And you have to have a 30, you have to have a 30-day notice before you change it. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that,
Well, then at the meeting on the 21st, you say we're changing it. We'll make this one 37 days. And then you're ready for the next one. You're back in sync again. Just have a quick agenda item on the week before Christmas or whatever.
yeah, I think it may turn out that county council adjusts their direction in the intervening time, because there's a lot of discussion going on among public agencies and public agency councils about the best implementation of this. But for now, the best we have is to hold a 30-day approximate time frame. So Jenna, would it make sense to poll the committee members to see who, because my understanding is the reason we're talking about the difference between November 29th, December 29th, and December 2nd and December 30th is due to the Aqua Conference that first week of December. Should we ask folks on the call who are on the meeting here, whether we would be able to get a quorum due to the Aqua Conference on that December 2nd week? Do I understand that correctly?
Yes. Yes. Yep. Yes.
I more than likely would not be able to attend because driving back from Pasadena, I'm sure they're going to have a lunch or some wrap up at Aqua, and that'll hit right at 2:30 I don't think I could do it on the road.
Would you have an alternate who could attend, do you think?
Yeah, I could do that.
And you're talking about the 2nd, is that correct?
Yes.
Anybody else with a conflict on December 2nd? Please unmute yourself and speak up.
Sandra, are you going to go to Aqua?
I am, but I'm gonna do everything I can to be able to log in at 2:30 on December 2nd, even if it's by phone. Because like we said, on December 2nd, it'll be an agenda item and possibly just a ratification of a project. We could do that by phone. I'm gonna do everything I can. That's why we have telemeetings like this. I'm sitting in Maryland on the East Coast right now, so you know, it's 7:00 at night for me, and I made it.
How did you get my palm tree?
Very good. So we have a meeting, we have a motion and a second on December 12th, December 2nd.
I have a conflict, but it's not that important. It's a ribbon cutting at a new Italian restaurant on Lake Mission Viejo, so
Oh,
you could probably manage it.
marvelous.
Yeah, Domenico's, everyone come eat and drink.
We will. Okay, December 2nd and December 30th is the motion, and I seconded it, so I'll second that.
Anybody, so we know that Bill will send an alternate, anybody else, and Brian may as well. So hearing no opposition, I think that passes.
Okay, thank you.
That brings us to item number 8, discussion of the 2022 strategic visioning.
Yes, thank you. So the committee has shown keen interest in reinvigorating a strategic visioning process. So I wanted to give just a very brief background. The prior process that took place in 2015-16, the impetus for that was somewhat similar. It was prior to an Irbm plan update. It was a shift between 2 propositions. There were a lot of things going on. I think that's similar to right now, where there's a lot of things coming, the funds coming out through the state. There's a lot of new initiatives. There's a lot of work that's already been done. So I think there was keen interest in looking at doing this again. Last time, the ad hoc was selected via request for volunteers at a committee meeting. The intention was to get a balance of water agency and city representatives so that it wasn't weighted one way or the other. The discussion at 4 subsequent ad hoc meetings was intended to provide a lot of background on topics of interest that would inform any priority setting. The ad hoc recommended modifications to the Irbm goals and established 3 key priorities to develop sustainable water supplies, cultivate storage for potable and recycled water, and stormwater low flow capture, foster regional projects to maximize water resources, and there was emphasis on really trying to prioritize greater collaboration amongst partners. Next slide. So as I mentioned, these were the results of the process. We merged 2 of the Irbm plan goals. That was a big shift that went forward with the 2018 Irbm plan update. We then also incorporated the strategic priorities I listed earlier into the plan. And those are then considerations for actions we've taken since. For example, we initiated the project planning framework in 2019. The result of that was looking at an initial focus on the Aliso Creek watershed and forming the project collaboration group to foster projects. The group has met 6 times, and one of the key things is that we've made quite a bit of progress in moving forward toward a restoration project for the lower 6 miles. Next slide. So what I'd like, oh, sorry. So what I'd like to make sure we have today is some discussion amongst the executive committee as to what direction you'd like to provide to staff in terms of the structure, function, and timing of the ad hoc, and then what some of those priorities might be for the ad hoc to discuss. And you don't have to decide all of this now, but this is intended to have an initial conversation that results in a motion to agendize the formation of this group at the next meeting at a meeting you'd like for the process to kick off. So given that we do have additional meetings for AB 361, that doesn't necessarily mean it has to wait until the first quarterly meeting. However, the first quarterly meeting of 2022 is March. So next slide. So it's up to the group to provide direction to staff and to initiate the formation of the group.
Very good. So I
And
see
that concludes.
Sandra, your hand is raised.
Yes, thank you, Sandra Jacobs, Santa Margarita Water District. Thank you for that update, Jenna. I participated in the strategic visioning years ago. What has it been, 6, going on 7 years now? And when this first came up, and Kay or Vice Chair Haven, I believe you mentioned it initially, and I agreed with you that it may be time to take a look at the strategic visioning that we did years ago. But my intent in doing that, and my intent today, isn't to reinvent the wheel. It's to go back and take a look at the goals and objectives that we put in place and just re-verify those. Look at the studies, look at the progress that we've made, and be able to say, yes, this is the direction we're going in. There's been changes in the legislation that has gone on, the disadvantaged community issues that have come up, and possibly other political type issues that we hadn't really thought about that may affect water reliability, water supply, water quality, and what we've learned, and what worked and what didn't work. So I'm supportive of this formation of a committee. In fact, I'm also ready to volunteer, and I would go back and look at what your recommendation is. Meeting process, frequency. We need to. I would move approval for discussion these items and to bring back what we've done to date, and then volunteer if I may do so at this time, and whatever that first date is for our next committee meeting to ratify this ad hoc committee, I would be supportive of that timeline. But for me, those project goals, areas to inform, preferred considerations and discussion that you have in the staff report, I'm not here to reinvent the wheel or to make life difficult for the county. They have a lot going on right now. But what I do want to look back at is, where have we been? What did we learn? And do we need to change anything? Thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Sandra. Betty Burnett.
Yeah, I agree with Sandra's thoughts on that, this got a really solid foundation, the first start out. I would also love to participate. Of course, my agency is wastewater, not really a water agency focused or city focused. We do participate though pretty substantially in water quality testing and beach water quality especially. I do think there's a lot of changed circumstances that we really should consider. The underlying priorities were very strong and still are. But we're in the middle of really pretty significant drought situation in the state right now. We haven't heard a lot about it, but it is really significant. I think there are a number of large-scale projects that are going on among the agencies to try to rehabilitate, to add additional recycled water, and we should have a discussion about the how and whether the IRWM's focus should be to lend support to that for the near term couple of years. So I think those are really important things. I'd be interested in having more information from the county and the discussion of the strategic visioning about where water quality focus is going. There's been a number of studies that have been underway for a while, and being able to maybe look at pinning down some actual goals would be, I think, really a strong idea. So, and it looks like the action is to agendize formation of the committee, and I would agree with that. And if Jenna thinks we don't have to wait all the way to the first quarter, that's fine with me too, or I would be supportive of not waiting. So that would be my input, and thank you.
Thank you, Betty.
And okay, I was trying to figure out how to raise my hand electronically, so I can just,
Hey, Debbie.
Thank you, Kay.
No.
And I know last year, we were discussing this. I think, I absolutely agree with both Sandra and Betty, and I think, and with Jenna, as far as, not reinventing the wheel, just taking a look at where we were, what our priorities were. But I think also another point that was made in the discussions prior was that, as we start looking at grant funding and going forward, more and more, there are fewer and fewer, if any, bonds, that will be exclusively for water. So we need, I think, to take a look at some of the, sustainability, reliability, and see how that might fit in to some of these goals and where we might want to focus or look or tweak. So I think that, and I too would very much like to volunteer and be part of this visioning. I think that the points made about water quality are so paramount, and how that fits in with not only the drought issues, but at environmental justice issues and all of the other things that are going on around the state, and how that's going to fit in and how we're going to participate. So those are my comments.
Good comments. Thank you, Debbie. Megan Schneider.
Thank you. I had my hand raised, but I was just volunteering, but I recognize we don't have any city volunteers at the moment, so we're stacking this a little.
Right. So, okay, you're volunteering. I'm writing you down. Bill Moorhead.
Did I raise my hand by accident?
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay, Carol Moore.
Yeah, I do have a hand raised. I agree, and I too would like to participate. I do think we might want to think about too, South Coast Water has we're talking about increasing, water sustainability, developing supplies, and certainly their program is one that we might want to keep on the table and make sure we're thinking about that. I'm talking about their desal plan, if that's moving forward, and I think it is.
Very good. Thank you. So what I'm hearing is there's a lot of interest. I think it would be nice to have a nimble group so that it's easier to schedule. So perhaps a number of 6 to 8 with equal numbers from both city and agencies. And perhaps for a total of 4 meetings, 3 to 4 meetings. How many meetings do we think that we would need to get this accomplished? Does anybody have any ideas on that so that we can give Jenna the guidance that she needs? Sandra?
Vice Chair, I think you're right, 3 to 4 meetings. If we say 4, if we don't need the 4th one.
Okay.
We've got room for that.
And early in the year, late in the year, any guidance on that?
I think, Jenna, could you provide us some input on staff's availability and what your thoughts were for, assisting us in taking this step?
Yeah, I put that on there because I wanted to hear the committee's perspective and how quickly you wanted to launch this, and when you wanted the final result. The timing for us will either way will make it happen. But because the grant, I will note that the grant process will really ramp up in earnest in March if they keep with the schedule that I've heard, which it seems pretty assured, because they've been pretty open about the March-September deadlines. So I would recommend that, and it'll go until September. So once it's in September, so it takes, it goes over a decent amount of the year. So there will be overlap. It's unavoidable. So if you wanted to, if you really wanted to kick this off, I would suggest starting earlier, so that we could have at least a couple meetings before the grant process really starts, or aim for late spring once we're in the call for projects and waiting for projects to come in. But as I said, it really is more up to this group. If you wanted to really prioritize this for the earlier part of the year, we'll make it happen either way.
Madam Vice Chair. Thank you, Jenna. I do not want this to hold up any grant processing or applications. This is for us to refocus or focus the goals and objectives that we have now based on new information, let's say from water quality and such. As those, my intent isn't to stop the review process of projects at all. So if we started early, let's see if, let's just start. I hate to delay something and then, we lose focus on it, and we've got momentum right now. So let's go ahead and start early. It's a separate it would become a separate ad hoc meeting. It's not an executive, it's not at the tail end of an executive committee meeting. It's completely separate. I'm assuming it'd be telecommunicated or maybe in person, but probably not. But my intent is to not hold up anything that we know is already in the queue for grant funding. So then early for me is what I would recommend.
Okay, so I would actually recommend that now that you've approved the December 2nd date, there would be 3 very brief items, because it sounds like we already have a lot of interest. It would just be to have everybody say, this is our, we're interested, here's the ad hoc. That we do that at the next meeting, which would be December 2nd, and then the group could meet even in January, February, and you might actually have some recommendations to make at the first quarterly meeting in March.
Yeah, Betty, I would hope we could maybe work quickly enough that by that February 24th meeting, we could at least have, a slate of ideas to be shared. Maybe not approved until March, but just so that we're somewhat in line with the next round of grants. Although I do agree with Sandra, I don't know that it's necessarily to direct that per se. I think the grant process has a lot of direction already from the plan itself.
So we'll need some kind of a motion to move forward with this, outlining what we've kind of discussed already, that we will want to be able to get approval on at the December 2nd meeting. So we've already discussed keeping it a smaller group, 6 to 8, balanced. The first 2 meetings early in the year, at least, maybe January, February, so that we're able to come back and give some kind of report at our first quarterly meeting in March. So is anybody able to make a motion out of anything that I said there?
That sounded pretty good. So I guess we're moving ahead with the strategic visioning committee with 6 to 8 participants distributed between agencies and the city to begin work in the December timeframe with a goal of being able to report back to the executive committee in the March timeframe, with the notion that we are going to review the structure in place from the prior effort of the strategic visioning and take into account new facts and new factors, and bring recommendations forward.
So the only additional piece would be to add on to what Betty just said with form the ad hoc at the December 2nd meeting.
Okay.
Second. So Sandra Jacobs, I'll second that motion and slightly amended motion.
And I'm in agreement.
Thank you. And Bill, is your hand still up? Did you have something
Well,
to?
I was afraid to lower it because I'm not that familiar with Cisco.
Okay, just checking, just checking. And this, you know, I'm assuming that the same is true with Mike Freeman as well. So there it goes. It went down. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
So any further discussion on this motion? Any opposition?
Can I ask, so Kay, will you be making the recommendations for the ad hoc?
Yes.
December 2nd. Okay, thank you.
We had a prior discussion with Tiffany, and she's going, if anybody wants to volunteer from cities and municipalities, we would like that. So Carol, did I hear your name?
You did.
Okay, so Carol's volunteered. Yes, you already volunteered. We could use a couple more people from the cities. This is an interesting process.
Just volunteer Brian.
Brian, you've been volunteered.
No.
All right, we'll twist
I'm on
some other
OCTA. I'm
arms
already on
before-
5 committees there, so I'm maxed out.
We'll find 2 more before December 2nd.
Okay, so I think Tiffany's going to reach out to some people and see if she can't get some more city folks on the list, and we'll get this going. So very good. Thank you, everyone. And that brings us to our executive officers report, if I'm not incorrect there.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Havens. Good afternoon, everyone. Grant Sharp, Orange County Public Works. I'm serving as your executive officer this afternoon in place of Amanda Carr. We have a few items to update you on this afternoon. Actually, the first item, I'm going to let Jenna take this one. This is a late-breaking item. This is the immediate drought relief, urban and multi-benefit drought grant opportunity from the Department of Water Resources. So actually, these first 3 slides, these are amended slides to your presentation this afternoon. I'm going to let Jenna walk you through this item and explain the urgency on this particular matter.
Hopefully everyone can hear me. The plane decided right now would be perfect. So we've been tracking with all of the funds that are coming out kind of fast and furious from the 2021 Budget Act, which represents a grand total of about $15 billion allocated over 3 fiscal years for natural resource and climate change resilience priorities. One of the key drivers I would note is the water resilience portfolio. So I was glad to see that. We had comments in there, and hopefully we'll see some of the results of that applied to grant programs. So one of the initial grant programs was actually allocated in the very first legislation that came out as soon as we heard this was happening, and that was for immediate drought relief. So under the banner for the allocation to water, one of the categories is immediate drought relief. The initial draft guidelines that came out of the State Department of Water Resources for what they did is they combined the urban and multi-benefit drought relief funds that they've received, had a carve out for disadvantaged communities and tribal involvement, or what I'll refer to as DACT recipients. What this means is they've effectively created a nexus to the IRWM program. The DACT agreement is held as a funding area. So the San Diego IRWM region took the lead. They volunteered, and they have been in charge of for applying on that for that piece under the IRWM banner. By DWR putting into this grant a set aside for to the total of 50 million. What they've done is kind of pre-allocated 5 million set aside per funding area. So that's for all of the 3 regions in the San Diego funding area, us, San Diego, and Eastern Riverside. What that means is we don't currently have any projects on the DACD list. So there's a list of projects that were already pre-vetted and they're part of that agreement. South Orange County didn't submit any projects through that process, which happened several years ago at the beginning of Proposition 1. And the original guidelines made it sound as if you already needed to be on that list. As we went through the process, we got some more information. We found out really recently that San Diego, that we were going to get this kind of carve out specific to our funding area, and that we needed to coordinate on a funding area level, but also that when they needed immediate drought response, that definition is a little more open than what we originally thought. So we spoke to the management committee because this is time is of the essence. The first application is actually due in November. The second application opening is in December, and the funds are allocated kind of a first come, first serve. But for the DACD set aside, they really want the funds allocated in the first several months. So we have to act very quickly. So I went to the management committee, and next slide, Andy. We had to kind of make some decisions really quickly. First of which is, do we have any projects in South Orange County? We're lucky in that we do not have wide areas representing disadvantaged or severely disadvantaged communities. That's the DAC, SDAC acronyms. Those are those acronyms you see there. San Diego, I think they have between 20 and 30% of the population that is representing a DAC, which is 80% or less of the mean household income, and severely disadvantaged is 60% MHI. In South Orange County, we have about 5% of the population that meets this definition, and it represents pretty small pockets. However, now that we've gotten that kind of revised interpretation of drought relief that includes projects that really provide drinking water to disadvantaged communities, there's actually a project that we think will qualify from El Toro Water District that I'll go through in a second. So we need to move quickly to coordinate with San Diego. One of the first questions was, what does this look like? Because the set aside is very similar to IRWM. So the management committee agreed to split the funds as we do for Proposition 1, which is based on land area and population. So that means that for this DAC set aside, South Orange County would submit a project or a total ask of $617,668. Next slide. So the project that came forward is the El Toro Water District's R2 Reservoir Interior Recoating Project. This project, it's my understanding that through some investigation, it's become apparent that there's an immediate rehabilitation necessary. The reservoir holds potable water. It has a 2 million gallon capacity. In order to retrofit the reservoir in combination with several other significantly increased costs to some of the maintenance demand that serves this area, which represents 70% disadvantaged or severely disadvantaged communities. This is, I think, our largest concentration apart from San Juan Capistrano for disadvantaged communities. That an immediate fix is necessary, and without grant funds, that will likely result in an increase in rates to these ratepayers. So we looked at this project in terms of how it meets with IRWM goals. It definitely meets the intent of the water supply reliability and efficiency goal, specifically one of our key strategies, which is listed there. As I mentioned, the disadvantaged communities represent, based upon the average daily use from the reservoir, 70% of the service area. And the total cost of the construction of the project is about $733,000. So this grant would fund most of it. So the difference here is that this is not an IRDM grant, so it doesn't technically follow the process we ordinarily would. Also, it has on a super expedited time frame. So one of the key provisions of the guidelines is that each IRWM group needs to effectively kind of approve or bless the fact that this is going in support of the projects included for the entire funding area. So anything from Riverside, San Diego, and South Orange County. There isn't guidelines on how to do that, so we've gone back to San Diego, and I think that the best fit would be for us to include our project in the package, look at the package in its entirety as San Diego puts it together, and I'll have at least some information on that to bring to you in December in terms of what types of projects are looking to be included in that. And then the direction would be for Amanda Carr as executive officer to submit a letter of support for the grant application, which is what we did for the initial DACT submittal. Marilyn Tomes submitted a letter of support. So it doesn't have to be super formal, but I do want to come back to this group on December 2nd to give you an idea of what's in that package so Amanda can write the letter of support.
Jenna, it's Betty. Do you know what the rest of the San Diego funding area has in mind towards that submittal towards, I guess it's the entire funding area that has the $5 million cap, is that right?
Well, it's a $5 million set aside. It doesn't mean that you can only apply for $5 million that serves disadvantaged communities. And that also applies to South Orange County. If any agency felt that they had a non-DAC project, they could apply for the funds, because we don't have a lot of DAC area in Orange County. But for San Diego, other DAC projects could also put applications in for the full consideration, meaning not just a set aside.
But do we know that they have or they will yet, or do we have any information on that?
We know that they have at least 2 projects. That was my understanding, because they hold on the existing project lists that are somewhat pre-vetted. There were 2 applicable projects. I do not remember what the project type was, but last I spoke, I believe they were also speaking with 1 or 2 of the tribes that may have projects, because they have 12 recognized and land-owning tribes. So some of which I believe are on mutual systems. So I think they were anticipating a handful of projects from San Diego. I have not heard anything from Riverside County.
Okay, Carol, looks like Carol might have her hand up, so I want to let her go, but then I have a couple more questions
Go ahead
at some point when you're done with other folks.
Go ahead and finish if you would like.
Oh, okay. Well, the only other thing I wonder, I would be very supportive of this project. The only thing I kind of wondered about is, because this is a rehab, is there any limitation on projects that are the difference between capital construction and O&M or maintenance? And so I just wondered if the grant program, if you feel pretty confident that a rehabilitation project is going to be okay in that.
Hannah of El Toro's staff and I and Grant had a call with Ashley Gilreath with DWR earlier this week, after the management committee provided some direction, and Ashley did not express concern that it was a rehabilitation. I think it's a little bit different, considered a little different from O&M, given that it's quintessential to the storage of potable water and delivery of potable water in that area, and it would be offline if not serviced. And it's not looking at ongoing operations and maintenance. Usually the specification is ongoing operations and maintenance.
Okay, well, I'm supportive, so I'll just stop with that. Thank you.
Carol?
Yes, I strongly support this. And I thought it's my understanding, aren't the DAC projects, they're the more likely. That's my understanding. San Diego has a foot, not several feet ahead on this one. And I think the fact that we could meet that, it seems to me very important. This is a great use of the money, because protecting infrastructure is a critical part of any water project. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And Sandra?
I'd just like to echo that I know you don't need our approval today, but you're bringing this back on December 2nd for our blessing, along with the AB 361 and the ad hoc committee approval. Is that right? Those are the three things now. Yeah, the
Yes.
rehabilitation of the R2 Reservoir is significant because we don't have a lot of disadvantaged communities, except a lot of them in El Toro Water District. And, you know, Santa Margarita assists in that we own capacity in that R2 Reservoir and would be very much interested in supporting that. Any funds we can bring back to Orange County is a good thing. So good job in jumping on this. Just go, girl, go. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. And in the interest of time, let's hold our comments till the executive officer's report is finished. Thank you.
Okay. And that concludes that part of it, Grant, so you can take over.
Well, thank
Next
you
slide,
very
maybe.
much. Yeah, excellent job, Jen, and thank you, Vice Chair Havens. In the interest of time, I actually will refrain from going into detail on any of these items. I think most of them are pretty straightforward, unless there are any questions from committee members on any of these. But it's at the pleasure of the committee.
Grant, could you, I don't know if you shared out the letter from the executive officer of San Diego on the investigative order for the Liso burn, but I'd really be interested to see that. It's Betty. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Committee member Burnett, we'd be happy to make that letter available. I think it is available. I'll confirm that and circle back with Jen, and we can make sure it gets distributed.
Very good. I think we had one more slide on the
Yeah, there was one more slide. So just a huge shout out to Molten Miguel Water District and just a tremendous amount of partners who came together for the H2O for HOAs forum on October 19th. It was really nice to see folks in person again. Just a tremendous event. So I want to thank everyone who participated in that. And, you know, I would encourage, for those who missed it, I believe you can go to Molten Miguel's website, and I think they will have the presentations up on their website at some point very soon.
That is correct.
Bill, are they up now?
They should be up now. When we get off this call, I'll make sure they are.
All right. So very good. Thank you very much, Grant. And that brings us to our executive committee member reports. Should any members on the committee have any further comments or anything that we need to be made aware of before our next meeting, please raise your hand now.
I think I've spoken enough. Thank you. This is Sandra.
Yeah. And I'm seeing no hands raised. So with that, we will be adjourned at 4:36. Thank you very much, everybody. And please make an effort to be here on December the 2nd in order to keep some very important items rolling along. Thank you.
Thank you. Great meeting.
Thank you. Good job, Kay.
Thank you for your support, everyone.